I would like first to inform you that this meeting, as you know, this webinar will be recorded. And just a few rules for the house: keep yourself muted. Please have your questions in the chat box. And also we will have questions after each of the presentations. And if you will have any additional information, then you can always write us an email. This is the program for today, so I will be with you a little bit longer doing some opening remarks. And today we will be doing three cases. The first case is Concha Toro, of how Concha Toro is actually using Singapore as a distribution center. The second business case, it's about AI Palette, how they are actually supporting with innovation to companies around the world, and they are based in Singapore. And the third is about manufacturing, why Just Eat actually has set up in Singapore to have their manufacturing facilities. So let's get started. I will actually refer more in detail to the takeaways of yesterday. First, we're very pleased to have signed a Singapore Memorandum of Understanding with the Singapore Food Manufacturers Association. It is indeed very pleasing for us to help and connect the companies, food manufacturers in Latin America more close to Singapore. And when we talk about Singapore, we're just not only talking about Singapore companies, we're talking about companies with a very strong and large footprints in Asia that for regulation and for easiness of doing business, they have set up headquarters here in Singapore. As the main takeaway, you have seen through the presentation of EDB and the panel discussion that Singapore has been building a very vibrant food tech ecosystem. Singapore is a very small country, and actually all its success is very much linked to international companies. So international companies for Singapore are partners. So that's for us, for Latin American Chamber of Commerce, important to actually share with the companies in Latin America that there is a place here to find partners in order to innovate, in order to co-manufacture. Doesn't mean that the manufacturing could be done in Singapore, but it could be done in the region through a Singapore company, or been using Singapore as a hub for distribution around the market. That's where like the main key takeaways of yesterday's meeting. And the other part is with Tim's presentation. You see the enormous potential that is in the region, and that the region, Asia, is not only China, Japan, Korea. Southeast Asia has a population of more than 655 million people, and they are the fastest growing middle class and consumption. So there is a huge potential, though products cannot just come as they are in Latin America. So everything has to be made to the palette of this region, and ideally with partners in this region in order to become a very successful. And I would like to first introduce the speaker at this moment, because it's a company that is actually from Latin America. It's a company from Chile. It's a great success. It's one of the top ranked wineries in the world. It's Vinos Concha Toro, which we all know. And Guy Nuse is here with us. Guy and Concha Toro, they are members of the chamber, has been very helpful all the way. And for some years, Concha Toro has chosen Singapore as the headquarters for Asia. So Guy, please share more with us. How has been this journey? Why do you have chosen Singapore? What is the economies that you have found in Singapore to do this as distribution and the facilities, etc.? I think here we have some companies also in the beverage that are very keen to hear your story. Thank you, Guy.
Thank you very much, Angela. And thank you very much to the Chamber and everybody joining us this evening. I'd like to spend a few moments giving some background on Concha Toro, and in particular Concha Toro's place within Asia, and how we've grown the business here. and the relevance of Singapore. So I have a short presentation to share with you that we'll talk through. So Singapore for Concha Toro has been our gateway to Asia. We've actually been here for now almost 10 years, for over 10 years. Although we've been operating in the region for much longer than that, with partners stretching back over 25 years within Asia. I am sure a lot of you are very familiar with Concha Toro, but for those who aren't, just some very simple facts. We are one of the top 5 wineries in the world. We have turnover in excess last year actually of $1 billion, and we produce a huge amount of wine. And Asia has been one of our growth successes over the last decade. We are #1 in terms of exports from Chile, but we are a multi-origin producer. So we also have wineries in Argentina and in California. But we are very dominant, particularly from a Chilean perspective. And we are not just a big producer, but a producer that has great renown within the industry. And we've consistently been within the most admired wine brands within the industry over the last 15 years. And we've achieved this position really down to 3 key factors. One, it all starts clearly in the vineyards, and particularly our vineyards in South America. But we are a highly export-focused business, and we actually export to more than 130 countries globally. Over the last years, our focus as a business has changed as we've adapted to what's happening with consumers across the world. And there we see a growth, particularly in premiumization within the wine category, as we see millennial consumers in particular drinking less volume of alcohol, but willing to pay more to drink better. And our focus since 2017 has been quite different to where we were up to that point, where we were much more really a volume-driven company looking to grow across the globe. Now we are very focused on achievement within key markets and within key brands. And one of Concha Toro's key points of success has been the ability to become closer to markets. As I said, we produce in 3 locations, all in the Americas, but we export from there to over 130 countries. And one of the things we've looked to do is establish commercial offices around the world that will enable us to become much closer to our retailer and distributor partners, as well as closer to the consumer, to have a much better understanding of what is happening in markets. The first office we established was the UK, which is where I used to previously work. And back in 2009, we decided that we wanted to focus on Asia as a hub for growth. We had a small representative office in Shanghai at that period, but that wasn't efficient either from a bureaucratic and taxation point of view, but also in terms of where we wanted to be centralized within the region. As many companies did, we assessed the options of Hong Kong and Singapore. And we made the choice of Singapore because we thought it offered the greatest opportunities in terms of the ease of doing business, the centralization in terms of travel and distribution, given that we cover markets from Japan in the north down to New Zealand, and in particular, the expertise and capability that we see within the market here. The reason for the establishment is all about unlocking the opportunities in the markets by increasing the focus here. As I said, we look to grow value over volume, and we have markets in Asia which enable us to do that. Our original objective was to double our sales value in 5 years. We actually achieved that in 4, and we've gone on to grow substantially over the last 5 years as well. Why? Because for a Latin American company, there are some very clear barriers if we don't have presence close to the market. Physical distance, the time difference, as well as cultural barriers and having to deal with multiple languages. And we've really identified 3 pillars to succeed in the Asian markets. Integration, the key point that I want to discuss today, which is about distribution, and having real clarity in what we want to achieve. In terms of our integration, clearly we see a significant benefit in having local human resources. And because of Singapore's background and the base that we see from a human resource perspective here, we've been able to build a very multicultural workforce covering both Singaporeans and foreign employees from very different backgrounds. We've also been able to build very strong relationships with strategic commercial partners across the region. And now we've taken the next step to vertically integrate, in particular to service the Singapore market, but also we've now taken that step within China with the establishment of an office there and in Japan. We built a specialized team in the region that covers all of the functions that we need. So this is not just a sales office. We have the ability to put the resources in place to service our clients within the same time zone. And as a result, we can react much faster to the needs and opportunities in the market. As I mentioned, we've been established here since 2010. We celebrated our first decade last year, and we've gone on to build a further base in Shanghai and then in Japan, a joint venture with our strategic partners there. From a distribution perspective, we have a very defined, clear route to market. And Singapore gives us very easy access both to ASEAN and beyond. And this has become particularly important given some of the challenges that we faced during 2020 as a result of COVID, but also that we see now with some of the challenges around shipping that we see from a global perspective. Having a base here, stock close to the market, has enabled us to become very agile in our response and to be able to cover some of the challenges that we face. And having that particular, as we've adapted our go-to-market model, Singapore has become an even more relevant hub, particularly to service the growth of fine wines. It's also enabled us to build a very clear understanding of the final consumer. Having the hub in Singapore enables us to be in market and very close to our distributor partners in order to have a really strong understanding of what works and what doesn't work in those markets, and to be able to feed that back to our head office teams as we look to build the right marketing campaigns and brand building programs that fit to the Asian consumer. If we did not have the resource here, we would not be able to do that. Similarly, from a distribution perspective, it enables us to understand the capabilities of our distributors and to look at building relationships to cover some of the gaps that we would have had. That clearly is much more difficult when you are thousands of miles away around the world. And the other thing is that, we've been able to build brands. Sorry, to build. The other thing is, you have to have clarity in our objectives, and one of those objectives was for Asia to be the growth engine of Concha Toro's business. And over the last 6 years, 83% of the incremental growth of the business actually came from Asia Pacific and Greater China. It's also a market in which there is a great strategic fit to our objectives, and we want to continue to premiumize our portfolio. That brings challenges in that you're talking about wines which have limited availability, and wines where, from a distributor perspective, having to ship, with a 3 or 4 month lead time from Chile can cause us to miss out on opportunities. Holding stock in the market here has also allowed us to build substantially in terms of our agility to take those products into market and to maximize opportunities. And over the last 18 months in particular, that has been hugely relevant. And we've actually looked to change the way in which we go to market in certain smaller markets, where having the flexibility of holding product here allows our distributor partners to take opportunities to grow market share, because other companies have had gaps in availability, as well as having to react to what's happening from a regulatory perspective as regard to opening and closing of markets from a COVID perspective. And we've continued to build brands, and referring back to my previous point, having local knowledge within Asia has been a huge opportunity for us. And we've seen other major South American wine companies follow this model and then develop a base in Singapore. In terms of our results, some great opportunities here we've seen here in Singapore. Australia is a very natural competitor for us from a wine perspective. But over the last years here in Singapore, as we've managed our own distribution, we've been able to grow the share of Chilean wine significantly, overtaking France in the market and taking share rapidly from Australia as a key competitor. In terms of the performance versus our competitors, you can see that over the last years, we've really been dominant within Chilean wineries in Singapore, having built market share significantly. And that's all about having that understanding, building relationships at a local level, and being able to capitalize on opportunities that other brands who don't have the benefits that Concha Toro does by being in Singapore have not been able to do. And I think, it's great that obviously Chile as a total category has grown really strongly, but we've grown twice as fast as the category. In terms of what Singapore offers for us and for other Chilean companies, really strong geographic location within APAC, really good connectivity to other APAC markets, which, as Angela mentioned in her introduction, are so important now in terms of economic and future growth. We have obviously one of the best airports and transportation hubs in the world. Allows us to step onto a plane in normal circumstances at least, and be in our key markets within hours. Again, something which is not possible when we were dealing with these markets from our headquarters in Santiago. And from a shipping perspective, we have one of the best shipping hubs in the world, that allows us then to transship and also to take advantage where we can of some of the free trade agreements that Singapore and Chile participate in. And clearly it is a very open market. You know, there are a lot of multinational companies present here. You know, we have a strong system with regard to openness to bringing expertise into the market. And at the same time, we have a great skilled domestic workforce that allows us to build capability, as well as the opportunity to bring in expat expertise, whether it's within the wine business or from a wider FMCG perspective. And it's also a leading international finance center, which makes our operations much smoother moving forward. One of the key factors for us for choosing Singapore was about ease of doing business. So ease of doing business from a shipment perspective and from a travel perspective is one thing, but on the other side, very easy to establish a company here, significant support offered from the likes of the Chamber and also EDB, and one of the best places in the world to live, which one you want to bring and offer opportunities to workers and employees within your businesses in Latin America is a huge opportunity for them and a great life experience that I can be testament to after spending 10 years here. And from a financial perspective, there are generous incentives and great grant support, which are very focused on driving productivity and working better within the market. And obviously, one of the key things we see now is the digitalization programs that we are looking to tap into as an SME here. Strong from a corporate tax perspective, and obviously because of the reciprocal agreements between Singapore and Chile, it's a great working environment for us from a financial perspective. The other thing is, we operate, particularly in Southeast Asia, with other markets which have very much more stringent tax and import regulations and don't have the stability that Singapore has. So whilst Vietnam, Thailand, Indonesia are significant markets for us, Singapore gives us the ease of doing business and the stability of knowing that we don't face those kind of challenges. And it's one of the reasons that not just Concha Toro, but many other wineries from both Latin America and across the world use Singapore as a hub for the region. So around 40% of wine imported to Singapore was actually re-exported, and that pattern continues today. We have here a market which is a great base in which to build Asian business. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you very much. I don't know if we have some questions for Guy, because I know we have some wine companies here, so they might be curious. Yeah, I don't see any question in the chat, but in terms of cost saving, do you see a cost saving advantages by having the distribution channel here and actually do redistribution from Singapore? Normally, we always hear that companies say Singapore is a very expensive country. We will not be there because it's too expensive. Does it make sense, actually, financially?
It very much depends on your product offer, Angela, and I think that's one thing we have to be clear on. There are expenses because of some of the challenges that Singapore has, particularly with regard to cost of land and buildings. So, but where we see is, particularly given the premiumization that we see in the market, that actually plays to Singapore's strengths, because for our more premium wines, the cost related to operating in Singapore becomes a much smaller part of the total product cost. And for us, that is outweighed by the benefits of doing business here and the ease of doing business. I mean, just as an example, I was speaking to our distributor in Vietnam today, and they face massive changes in regulation year after year. I am more than willing to pay a little bit more to be in Singapore, but know that when I bring wine into the market, I know exactly how much I'm going to pay, and I can build my cost base from that perspective.
Thank you. We have some questions in the chat. Does Concha y Toro currently have any strategies in place with unique product identification, aiming supply chain visibility, IoT, and ultimately enhancing customer engagement?
Okay, so in terms of unique product identification, that is something for us that is becoming particularly more relevant as we expand particularly our fine wine portfolio, because provenance and authenticity are something which we have to be able to demonstrate when we're selling wines at an ultra premium level. So we've looked at now using technology such as NFC in order to allow both our distributors and consumers to know that those are official Concha y Toro products. In terms of IoT, that's something which, to be honest, is much more a focus for the winery itself back in Chile and building that capability. So I'm not really best placed to cover that. But in regard to really enhancing consumer engagement, this is where we see massive opportunities. Asian consumers are very eager to understand much more about the product, and leveraging technology, particularly through the accessibility with smartphone now, with NFC, with QR, which obviously has become a massively accepted technology now that we all have to check in and out of places with COVID. It gives us great opportunities because then we can build both engagement with the consumer in terms of being able to present brand assets. Wine is a hugely fragmented, challenging category, much more so than a lot of other beverage categories. And we have to be able to exploit technology to give consumers reasons to buy. And that is something that we've looked to exploit, and in particular working with local partners here in Singapore to do NFC programs in the likes of Korea.
Thank you, Guy. And last question. Which are the benefits for your distribution apart from the faster reaction and better service? Do they pay less taxes, for instance? In general, because we operate from an export perspective with taxes paid at destination, there are generally benefits from that perspective. However, one of the things that we have looked to do is to adapt our business model so that we can look to minimize taxes as a result. So as an example, we've built a model in Thailand where we've actually been able to start bottling in Thailand, because that does allow us to benefit from significantly lower taxes. And we've actually established a joint venture program there. And that opportunity came to us because we had the base in Singapore, because we're able to manage that commercial relationship and provide marketing and branding support to that business, as well as technical expertise. But for us, the other benefits that it absolutely brings, we go back to some really basic examples in a way. Having a base here and having that responsiveness makes a huge difference. Even when it comes to quite basic things like providing point of sale
material designs to our distributors. What we used to have to do was to take a piece of work, send it to the team in Chile, get the amendments made, send it back to the distributor, who then wanted another set of changes. And before you knew it, we were a week down the road. Now we can do that in the same day. You see? And in such a hugely competitive space, for me, that is a really key advantage.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was indeed very interesting for many of the companies here that are now in Latin America. And I'm sure many would like to come to Singapore, at least to pick a view.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.